Alright, welcome to the basement. It's been a while. Finally have a new project underway. I've been working on it since January already. I'm recording this now in March, so I have more than enough content that this is all going to be falling far behind from where I'm actually at in the progress, or in the project. So, what am I working on right now? We are building as you haven't seen in the thumbnail, a Black Templar from Warhammer 40k. To be specific, the Sword Brethren of the chapter. This will definitely be a long series. Like I said, I started this in January. I'm going to have it ready, try to have it ready in time for Sci-Fi Valley Con, which is in the middle of June. So that's like a 5-month period I can try and squeeze this all out. So back in October, I finished up my RoboCop suit for Halloween, and then after that I started upgrading some of our Warhammer suits. I updated the Sister Battle and then my Terminator Chaplain, which is off camera. After that, I was taking about like maybe a 3-week little vacation just to get caught up on games, get ideas on what I wanted to do, brainstorm. I figured January 1st, that was going to be my time to start whatever I had planned. So in that time period, I started playing a ton of Darktide. Hence, this guy over here, built him up real quick in about a week, and immediately got sucked back into the universe. Originally, I wanted to make a Plague Marine, which aren't actually in the game, but you're dealing with basically everything Nurgle related in Darktide. And the more I started looking into like stuff from that, the Plague Marines are insanely cool. They open mouths and tentacles and stuff. I love the entire look of it. But yeah, I thought I said I was going to do a Black Templar. What are we doing talking about Plague Marines? Well, the idea was I was going to be doing a 3-piece suit. So for me and 2 other people. But I couldn't really think of anything that would work with that specifically. So I started looking around for something else that was kind of cool, but I could also do as well. So the idea was, at the time, my dad, who wanted me to make him something, I had to take into account that he's older, he can't walk a lot, and he needs to be able to sit down and take a break whenever he needs to. So if I'm going to make him something, it's going to have to check off several boxes. One, anyone can wear it, easy for him to get up and down, sit on, and maybe something that will help him walk around if his legs start hurting or something. So immediately I started thinking tech priest. I could make him a tech priest suit, just a gown, maybe a mask, backpack, and carry a staff that'll help him walk if he needs any help, and he'll be set. So like, alright, so I got that idea down. My girlfriend's like, well, make me something too. I'm like, perfect, I can do that too, but it's got to be in theme. So I'm like, okay, so if I'm making my dad a tech priest, I need to make something that's also something that's on the same team, the same side. So I was like, alright, so looking at like all like the famous female characters in Warhammer, we've already done a Sister Battle suit. I'm like, I can't just do another one. It's right there, it's done. So I'm looking at some Inquisitors. Saint Celestine has been done to death by everybody. Haven't really seen Catalina Greyfax done much, so I was like, we can do that. She's like, that's cool. She kind of looks like a demon hunter from Diablo 3. We've done one of them in the past. I'm like, alright, so what kind of ties us all together? I was like, Black Templars. They look cool. But the whole reason I ended up seeing these ones, or choosing these ones, was that while I was searching around looking for stuff that kind of fit the same faction, I ended up kind of checking out the Joy Toy figures, the Warhammer figurines that they make. And they have an entire line of figures that's coming out this year. Most of them are still on pre-order as of right now of recording. But they had these really cool Black Templar ones. Big flowing cape, slightly stylized, but everything about them was just super cool looking. But there was like one in particular that just got my attention. And it was as dumb as it sounded, is because of the pauldrons. So most Black Templars have like a black and white combo pauldron, but this one had black and red. So black outline, red cross with the bone skull in the center. To me, that reminded me of the Chaos Comics logo from back in the 90s. Not to go on a weird tangent about Chaos Comics, but the logo was very similar. For them, their logo was the Eras of Chaos with a skull in the center. I know the Eras of Chaos immediately was like, well, it's a Chaos Marine. Their symbol is Eras of Chaos, but the color combo is not right there. The color combo on this pauldron was exactly, it hit me in the nostalgia, and I just immediately got sucked back into my childhood. I mean, like, I still have an entire bin of Evil Ernie comics, Evil Ernie statues, Lady Death figurines, Evil Ernie figurines. I mean, I had it all. I still have it all. But something like that, for some reason, it popped out at me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. So, fast forward like a month or two, and my dad says, hey, hold back on it for a bit just in case. If you get time, do it, but if not, don't worry about me. I'm like, alright. And then me and her, she wants me to try doing something else, which I'm going to try to do since I haven't started the Greyfax suit yet. Probably end up going to Joann's later, maybe next week. So now it's just me. If I could go back and somehow re-engineer all this into a Plague Marine, without a doubt. But I don't have a lot of room down here for Warhammer suits. So if I make any more after this one, it'll be one more, and it'll be that Plague Marine. It's on my bucket list now. It just has to be made. This is good enough. I like the design. It looks cool. I love the chains and the weapons and stuff. Everything about it's just cool. So that's what I'm doing. Plus, when I pick a project, I'm trying to find something that either hasn't been done much, if at all, and also, if it has been done, hasn't been done that well. As far as this goes, I haven't seen anybody do these specific Marines yet. So, of course, I say all of that, and right behind me is this. And how many freaking Sisters of Battles have you seen? Hundreds? But in my defense on that statement, because I just said that I don't like to do things that have been done originally. Oh yeah, because over here there's a RoboCop. Okay, excuses, so I get to explain now. See, one, this was an accessory. I built this to go with my Terminator Chaplain because my sister wanted me to make her something. So this was for my sister. This was, I mean, I put effort into it obviously, but it was not the main attraction. It was an accessory. This guy was a Halloween costume. I don't care. That's the whole point of a Halloween costume, is for it to be recognizable. Okay. Done. Okay. I'm done side rambling. On to the actual build itself. Alright, so for the first piece, we'll talk about the chest piece. That's the first piece I started with. That was done with a template. To explain the situation, at the time when I started this, I had, like I said, I had the two other suits that I was also going to be making. So to save time, I was like, well, I'll just get templates offline and rush build this. That way I have time to do the other two. So the RoboCop suit was all done with a template. I'm familiar with templates. I've used them before in the past. Didn't have a problem with them, so I figured I would have been very comfortable with this. Long story short, I only used a template for the chest piece. I opted out of it immediately after building the chest piece. But yeah, I was able to buy every template individually. So my idea was I was going to buy the chest piece first, and then as I went along, I would continue to buy the piece one piece at a time. And then if I ran into any issues, I didn't waste a lot of money. I just had the few that I had bought. Just bought the chest piece, and that was it. As for why I opted out of it, I'll get into it. Yeah, so the template itself, it came with three things. One, it came with a 3D model of the actual piece. It came with word-by-word instructions on how to assemble the template, and then 3 was the template. I didn't have a copy of any kind of like 3D software that's popular these days for cosplayers, specifically Armorsmith. So the 3D model, it was scaled correctly when you threw it into an actual 3D modeling software. Unfortunately, the only kind of templates I'm familiar with are Pepakura files, and this wasn't a Pepakura file. The 3D file was just a regular 3D file that you could put into something like Armorsmith, which I don't have because I don't build that many big suits, even though I have like 3 right now. But my intention is not to keep making big suits, so I never saw an interest in purchasing a copy of it. But Armorsmith is pretty cool because it lets you make a 3D representation of your physical body. So lets you pick your height, weight, all your measurements and stuff, and then you can then take your 3D models and then put them in place and then scale them accordingly to what you need. And then at that point, then you know how to scale your template. It's like, well, this needs to be 10% bigger. Well, I'm going to make that template 10% bigger, you know. Yeah, but I didn't have that, so I had to figure out the scaling my old-fashioned way, which is the exact same way I've made all of my other suits in the past. So this process is insanely simple. It can be done in any kind of art program imaginable. I mean, I actually made this in MS Paint. That's how easy this is to do. So first you need reference photos of your costume or whatever you're making. You want to get profile shots, so you want to get the front shot, side shot, and then what I'll do then, I'll make a grid pattern in Paint or whatever, and just make sure your squares are all the exact same. So with the grid pattern fully laid out, the way it kind of works out then is the each square will be, you know, 1 by 1 foot square, and I'll then have that set aside, and then I'll scale these reference photos to scale for what I want. So in this case, I'm 6 foot even, so I will be 6 blocks tall in this. So when I'm scaling my image, where I want to fit inside this suit, I want to fit 6 blocks. So this will give me an idea of keeping both the character proportionately correct, while also being able to fit in it and control it. Getting proportions right is like my biggest nitpick when it comes to doing these kinds of things. Not picking on any other cosplayers, especially Warhammer cosplayers, but if you'll notice, some of them will go for like height accuracy. So they'll, it's like, okay, well this character's supposed to be 8 feet tall. Well, to get yourself up to 8 feet, you need to be on, you know, 2 feet stilts or a 1.5 foot stilt. So by the time you do that, you're upscaling the chest, the shoulders, the arms, and the next thing you know, by the time they're done, they have these tiny little baby T-Rex arms. You know, it just looks weird. You see around like this giant tall guy, everything's proportional, but the arms are just real tiny. You know, barely sticking out from underneath the pauldrons. I would rather have an inaccurately scaled character in terms of height to get the proportions correct. I'll take that hit rather than have something like that out of proportion. I mean, you can get around that by making the arms, like the lower, like the hands and stuff, fake, and then you control it from the inside. Some people have done that when they go for like the full accuracy thing, but a lot don't seem to. Makes for some weird looking Space Marines. So with this, that's exactly what I did. I ended up designing it so that the character will be about 7, maybe 7.5 feet total. The top, to the top of the actual suit, not to the top of me. So I can guess how high my stilts need to be, how I'm going to design everything. But once I had this all laid out, then I knew exactly how big this chest piece needed to be. So when I threw that 3D model in Pepakura, which I still could, it would tell me the actual physical dimensions of that 3D image, how many inches it is this way versus this way, X, Y, and Z, whatever. So I could then compare that to my little 2D representation of how wide I needed that to be, both X, Y, and Z, because I have the side profile and the front profile to figure out exactly how wide it needs to be, how tall it needs to be. I think I had to bump the percentage up 5%, which in hindsight I didn't have to. I had to do a lot of trimming to get it back down. Yeah, so with any paper template that I ever end up making, I'll always print it out and then I'll build the paper template first. This helps me find any issues that I might have in the building process. Plus, if there's any corrections I need to make, it's a lot easier to do it then rather than with the foam. That, and it lets me get a good idea of where everything's supposed to be, what angles I'm going to have to make everything in terms of cuts and stuff. No paper template is ever going to be perfect. There's always going to be something wrong with it. There's always going to be something wrong. And I could probably give like 20 different examples from the past. So like, for example, with this one, the entire shoulder right along here did not line up at all. Like it, for some reason, the alignment marks that are on it were way off just in this one spot. Like from like right here up, like in a span of like maybe 6 inches, they were all just off, like almost a ½ inch to a full inch. It was weird. Yeah, like EVA foam is pretty forgiving, but it's not that forgiving. I'd seen a similar issue in some of the customer review photos where their built pictures that they had shown right in that corner, the foam was kind of doing like this wavy thing, and that's from them tugging and pulling so hard to make those alignment marks match. I didn't see it in the seller's photos. I only saw it in the customer's photos. So I don't know if something got lost in translation or if it's a printer thing and like it just missed something, and when you tried putting everything together there's a small segment there that just threw everything off. Not entirely sure. But whatever the customers were running into, I was also running into too. But since I was building the paper template first, I was able to take care of it and address it. So my piece doesn't have that issue. In hindsight, it probably isn't that big of a deal, because once you have the actual pauldrons on, that's not going to be seen at all. But yeah, another thing I had, I wouldn't really call it an issue, but I also had to remove the neck guard that was on this template, because the Black Templars, one of the things that really stuck out about it that I liked was that they have this very like V-shaped medieval looking neck guard, or at least with the Sword Brethren. I think the regular ones might have the normal rounded one, but that V shape just looks so cool. It was almost like, kind of reminds me of Berserk almost, you know. But obviously with this template it was a normal rounded neck guard, so I had to take that out. But the template didn't have anything underneath supporting it, so before I took it out I had to make a fake piece underneath all that before I could then take the actual neck guard off. So what I have in the template now is kind of like a filler piece that was an outline of where the neck guard was. Hopefully it won't be noticeable by the time I'm finished. It shouldn't. If anything, the new neck guard should be a little bit lower and just cut into a V a little bit, so it shouldn't be seen at all. Hopefully. Yeah, so after I was happy with all the adjustments that I made, I made sure to label everything. I took a couple reference photos just to make sure that I had something to go back to when I had it taken apart. And then I started separating everything from the template. The template was only 1/2, so obviously when it came to doing the other half, I just have to flip the templates upside down, so I'd have a left and a right. After that, traced it all to foam, cut everything out, made sure to keep my blade as sharp as possible, usually in between every piece that I cut out. You know, took my knife sharpener, gave it a couple swipes, went at it again, made sure that everything laid out properly for each individual groups. That way I wouldn't mix anything up. A little bit of contact cement both sides, let it dry, put it all together. And that gets us a full chest piece. As of right now. At least. Yeah, these little details I cut in first. I figured it'd be a lot easier to do that before assembling everything. So, it's an inner piece for the backing. Made sure I took a Dremel to bevel out all this. Little details like this are a lot easier to do beforehand. Otherwise, it becomes a huge pain afterwards. It's not that it's not doable, it's just easier. Everything but this section right here was all 8mm foam? 6mm? I'd say 8 on your thicker side. And then this is all 5mm foam. No particular reason for this other than just because I didn't want to waste the thick stuff. But for the most part, I was pretty happy with the way the chest turned out. So if I was pretty much happy with it, why did I decide to skip the other templates? Especially considering the other two projects kind of got dumped to the wayside. Well, the more I started looking at the other templates, the more I started seeing like slight little differences. So I'm not exactly sure how to put exactly what it was I was dealing with, other than to say that I think the 3D models for these templates might have been based on like an older generation of the art style and figures. That's the best way I can put it, because the armor was correct, like the actual like Mark armor from Warhammer, I think it's like Mark 10, but some pieces seemed slightly different. So the chest looked correct, the backpack, the jetpack looked correct, but like the arms and the upper legs and all that looked very cylindrical, like they were very straight. And when I was looking at both the miniatures for the Black Templars and for the Joy Toy figures, there was a lot of like slight curves to it all. So I have this feeling that there was like a slight art style change, because I mean I know they're constantly bringing new stuff out all the time, but I have this feeling that like what I'm doing is a slightly modified newer art style, and that might have been an older art style. Don't quote me on it, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think that's what the issue was. At least it's what it seemed like, because other than that his stuff was pretty good. But the first thing that threw me off though was that, so the Black Templars, all of them, at least from the ones that I saw, their shin pieces are different than your regular Mark 10 Space Marine suits. I'll have to show like comparison images or something. So with the regular ones, you know, like you have like the completely round knee, cylinder style leg, like everything has like a very specific shape. And then meanwhile, your Black Templars, it looks almost like everything's very round, almost like there's a secondary plate on top of that. And I knew that if I was going to make that template, I was going to have to highly modify it, if not just redo the entire thing. And then I saw the other arms and leg pieces, and I'm like, I'll have to heavily modify that as well. And same with the midsection, everything else. So from that point on, I was like, I will make all the other pieces myself anyway. One other reason why I decided to cut it out too was because since I was no longer doing a 3-person costume group thing, it would feel wrong for me to take that to any kind of like costume contest and be like, oh yes, I built this from a template, you know. It would feel weird, like it wouldn't genuinely be my costume, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, sure, I put in the work, I did the detailing, I did the paint work, I did the sewing, I did all the gluing, the rigging, I put in all the hours, but that very, very first step, it being someone else's template, it feels like it would dock me some points. So from that point on, I'm like, I gotta do everything else by hand. Plus, after I started making some more pieces after this one, I started comparing stuff, and the chest was way too big, and I had to scale it down. I had a weird distrust of how big everything else was going to end up being. Even though I could use a 3D model to figure it out, along with my little like scale thing that I had made, it didn't give me a lot of confidence in myself to be able to get what I wanted. But I knew if I was going to build the templates myself for everything else, I knew I could get exactly what I wanted. So that's the plan going forward from this. But yeah, I mean, that's no disrespect to the person that made the 3D models. I think their models are fine. I don't see any problems with them. It just wasn't what I needed, and it wasn't going to work for my current situation. So I think what they're doing is great. The person that I got them from, he seems like he's constantly making new stuff from various armor sets, and both Sister of Battles, Space Marines, all different chapters, different mark armors. So yeah, dude's doing a good service. Plus, with any paper template, nothing's ever going to be perfect. If you don't believe me, watch my series on the RoboCop suit. I love that guy's templates. I've used them before for various like Halloween suits and stuff, but there was a ton of modifying that I had to do to build all that stuff, which is fine. I mean, your paper templates are not going to hold your hand when you're building something. It's all it is a time saver. It saves you the time for making your own templates. Their templates are never going to be perfect, and if you make templates yourself, they're not going to be perfect either. Unless you're building something from 3D, even when you are making something from 3D, just like in a case like this, you're still going to have minor issues. But yeah, so from that point on, I decided I'll be doing everything myself from here, my own template building, and that will be in part 2. I'll cover probably not all, but at least a handful of the template making processes for a couple different pieces, and you'll get to see how that whole process went out. Yeah, so stay tuned for part 2, and all that other fun stuff. See you in the next one.